Thank you. Thanks for the patience. You've been there since 10. I think we are touching upon a subject that most of us discussed, I mean, we all cover media. So this has been something we all wanted to talk about, that if you look at Operation Sindoor, it was not just a national security moment. It was a stress test for journalism also. And for newsrooms, it raised critical questions like, how do you report a fast-moving security operation without endangering lives? How do you verify information when official communication is limited by design? So we'll talk about it, and let's have some, Gaurav, you've been there, you reported about it, so I have questions for both of you. Starting with you, Gaurav, during Operation Sindoor, how did your newsroom balance speed with verification when social media and international outlets already were shaping the narrative of the war?
So thank you very much to you, Ruhail, to Exchange for Media, to Mr. Batra for having us over. Look, we set the narrative. The Western media wasn't setting the narrative. They may have tried, but we, the Indian media, came up with the facts first. All the facts that we had at our disposal. And this was a fast-paced development. It was happening so fast. A lot of information actually was coming from across the border in Pakistan. So for example, when Muridke was bombed, when Bahawalpur was bombed, when multiple terrorist training camps and launch pads were bombed, the visuals were coming from Pakistan. We, of course, kept going back to the government for verification. Now, there was an information overload, if I may. So much information coming from from so many places that our effort was to verify as much as we could and put it out as quickly as we could. Not just India Today, but the entire Indian media, that was the effort. Yes, social media was putting out a lot of information. There was a lot of misinformation and disinformation that was also being put out. So it was a huge challenge to ensure that you were in a position to put facts first and sift what was a fact and what was not.
All right. From a government's standpoint, what expectations does the government have when journalists are covering national security crisis? And where should the press remain uncompromisingly independent? How do you, look at it?
Thank you, Ruhail. Good morning, everyone. Namaste. Thank you, Anurag ji, for putting together another incredible year of both ENBA and News Next conference. And my gratitude to the entire team and to Ruhail. Thank you so much for having me. Now, to answer your question, and I will take forward what Gaurav was just saying. See, there is no one who's going to tell you to not report. There is no one who wants to silence the voice of information. What does the government ask for? Only credibility, accountability, and a seriousness with which these kind of incidents must be reported. So this is not a rush, not the fastest finger first moment when you are the first one to break a story, sometimes without verification. The government is keeping lines of communication very open. I remember, and I'm going to take Gaurav's example, at one point of time he'd put out a picture and he was somewhere along the border, I'm not sure where he was, and a person had commented on social media about him clicking pictures with some of our troops. And he had written a very big disclaimer there, saying that I am nowhere in the area where there is active movement of the Indian troops. I am being very judicious and very careful about this. And yes, I am on ground, but there is nothing in my photography, reportage, or anything that I put out on social media that could compromise the Indian situation. I think this is the ethos of what the government expects, and not just the government. This is what all of us as citizens also expect. Because in this situation, I was both a consumer of news, which was coming from the border, coming from journalists, people who were reporting, and the press conferences which the government was holding. And I was later also a participant in these news. So that's a unique perspective, being both a consumer and then a participant, and then understanding there is a fine line we all need to walk, especially when it comes to our country.
Gaurav, you mentioned that social media, of course, was building its own narrative, but when misinformation, moves faster than traditional broadcasts, should newsrooms slow down deliberately, even it means, it has a cost, as far as the ratings are concerned. Do you think newsrooms should consciously choose to slow down in such situations?
Let me be blunt about it, and let me specifically speak of India today. When we speak of broadcast, especially conflict on India Today and on Aaj Tak, there's a lot of credibility that comes with the brand India Today. And for us, our main aim, only facts should be out there in public domain. Yes, in the fog of war, and I will be very frank about it, in the fog of war, mistakes were made. But our entire effort was to ensure that our viewers only get facts which are verified. We do hope that the government is faster, the government is also real time with sharing information, because the adversary across is putting out a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and deliberately they're putting out falsehoods in public domain. For India Today has a fact check team. During Operation Sindoor, we had a 24/7 fact check team. We have an OSINT team. We verify all the videos and images that were being put out. And if you notice, when a mistake was made, we didn't brush it under the carpet. Our 9 p.m. anchor went on air and we owned up. Said, yes, something's happened. We are internally looking at our systems. We are carrying out an audit, and we did, incidentally. Because for us at India Today and at Aaj Tak, our credibility is the most important aspect for us. It's not fastest fingers first for us. So we are happy to be a little late with it. But we have to be truthful and, because the moment there's a big story, everyone switches on India Today dekho, Aaj Tak dekho. That's the credibility our network has, and we value it. We cherish it. So there was an internal audit. In that internal audit, whatever gaps were found, those gaps are being plugged. Additional resources are being pumped in to ensure this doesn't happen again. Let me, since we're talking about Operation Sindoor, with your permission, let me give the example of during Operation Sindoor, Pakistan was sending in hundreds of drones, right? India has a integrated air defense mechanism, the Akash Tir system, which was spotting everything and neutralizing what had to be neutralized. As far as we are concerned, our integrated air defense system, with a lot of misinformation and disinformation that was deliberately coming into the system, we were able to neutralize most of it. If something went wrong, we immediately took corrective measures to ensure it does not happen again.
It was an information warfare, of course, of a high-end order. So tell me, how should media respond, Charu, when political leaders sometimes publicly comment on an operation before the facts are fully established, and then we blame the media after that?
No, and I wanted to say this. The strength of our country is our democracy, the fact that all of us have a voice and we all use it. We love using it, whether on social media, in real life, we all have an opinion. But this very strength sometimes brings us to a point in a time of national crisis when we need to curtail, think, pause, and then speak. Because what are we saying today? Is it going to impact our country's position in the war that we are currently fighting? Are our statements going to be used by the enemy nation and then highlighted on their television and celebrated in their parliament? All of this has to be done with a lot of responsibility. See, we were militarily very strong. We have done impeccably well, and as all our chiefs keep reminding us that we set out with an objective and we achieved it 100%. Pakistan does not have a military that is strong. How do they work? They work with this infusion of news, of doctored photographs, of fake news, and they are able to synchronize it because they are not a democracy, right? So in their system, if they put out a photograph, nobody is questioning it. I still remember visuals of the Shahid Afridi, half out of a car celebrating. Don't you realize your country is bombed? Every single airstrip has been destroyed. What are you celebrating? Field marshal बनाए जा रहे हैं वहाँ पर. तो लेकिन वहाँ कोई पूछता नहीं है. जो पूछता is the odd man out because it's not a democracy. So in our democracy, if you are in politics, especially if you're in a position of influence where your voice matters, I very firmly believe, and there's no two ways about it, use it for your country first. Please be careful about making a पोजिशन क्लियर इन द टाइम ऑफ क्राइसिस. ऐसे बोलते हैं ना कि वॉर के समय में ना न्यूट्रलिटी कुछ नहीं होती. न्यूट्रलिटी है ही नहीं. इट इज़ योर कंट्री विच इज़ एट वॉर. यू आर नॉट लिविंग सम 5 countries away, 2,000 kilometers away. So while you're here, while your country is at war, how can you say मैं neutral news report करना चाह रहा हूँ? Even for our journalists, there is a amount of information that even if you have it, you have a duty to not declare it without the government's active consent. And there are no two ways about this. This is how you protect your country, and every single citizen. Forget about the politicians. Forget about the journalists. Even us as people with a social media account, we have this responsibility.
Gaurav, you know, when international media frames an operation differently from Indian newsrooms, how do you decide whether to counter that narrative or let facts speak over time?
So the lesser said about the Western media, the better. Look, this is the same Western media that spoke of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, right? This is the same Western media that was peddling the narrative that Ukraine is winning the war from 2022 itself. And we were reporting from ground zero, and we knew the setbacks that were there on ground. We were reporting facts. Ultimately, when you look at the situation in 2025, you know the Western media was peddling their government's agenda. And they've done this year after year, war after war. No weapons of mass destruction were found in Iraq. Look at the way they took down the Gaddafi regime, and they were talking about that drug-fueled rape carnage going across Libya. Ultimately, inquiries on human rights organizations said that was not true. So, Western media is peddling an agenda of their intelligence agencies. Are they free? Are they fair? Are they independent? If they were, they would have spoken the truth about Muridke and Bahawalpur being bombed. They would have spoken the truth about from Noor Khan to Sargodha to Mushaf to Rafiqi to Rahim Yar Khan to Bolari in Sindh, these multiple Pakistani air bases going down. Did they? Or were they then peddling the agenda of the weapons lobbies of the West and the Chinese weapons lobbies and trying to shift the focus only on what was happening on the Indian side? So is it that they do not want India to grow as a major weapons manufacturing country? And if they think made in India weapons are doing good, if the BrahMos supersonic cruise missile is doing good, let's not even talk about what BrahMos did across. Or the S-400 impact taking down an aircraft, AEWNC aircraft 300 kilometers inside Pakistani territory. You know, I don't hold the Western media in contempt, but I do realize that the Western media is peddling an agenda. Whether of their government or of their arms lobbies, they need to come clean. We know we are speaking the truth. And it's not because we say it's the truth, because it is the truth. Did Pakistan bomb any bases here? Did any Pakistani missiles come and hit Delhi, or all the propaganda that was carried out in our country? And yet the narrative is, oh ji, kitne plane gire, kitne plane gire, kitne plane gire. You tell me, anybody who's here, when you play a cricket match, do you say first over mein kya hua, ya ultimately match kaun jeeta? And on the 10th of May, if Pakistan was seeking a ceasefire, who won?
You want to add to it?
Yeah, no, I agree. And, you know, there is a psyops, of course, there is information warfare, of course. But at the same time, like I said, this voice of dissent needs to be tempered in our country. And I take that very personally because I'm a staunch nationalist. Now, Rohil knows that. So, at the end of the day, if you are going to be celebrated in your enemy country, something's very wrong with you, and something's very wrong with the people who are hailing that about you. कि नहीं भाई हमारे नेता की आवाज़ तो इतनी बुलंद थी. See, Pakistan was in a place where they were able to focus on information more than their response on ground. And we from the very beginning said that for us, this is about a target we've set out to achieve. Yes, maybe with that target, we had not discussed how to send this information out into the rest of the world. We were cautious in the beginning. We made sure the press conferences were conducted timely, properly, uniformly. Information was flowing from the government to all the citizens, to all the journalists. Those press conferences were very, very clear. People were allowed to ask all kinds of questions. But in spite of that, if you decide to take a stand which is completely opposite to what your government is telling you, what your military leaders are telling you, what is the proof in front of you? भाई पाकिस्तान की सुनने चलोगे तो बैंगलोर का पोर्ट उन्होंने बॉम्ब कर दिया था. तो उसके बाद तो we also went on a rant on social media, and I remember tweeting मैं नोएडा में हूँ और यहाँ सबमरीन आ गया है. So we were making fun of it. We were laughing it off, and it became like this competition on social media. Who will say the most outrageous thing to beat the outrageous thing that the Pakistanis were saying, right? Because we got clips of that. But at the end of the day, we understood the humor there. We understood the sarcasm. I don't know if the rest of the world caught on.
I have time for one question, two questions in fact. Okay, quick, yes.
Respect to our army. Whatever.
Well, what is the question, sir? Who?
The question is, we have to, everyone, we have to trust the army who is fighting there. Rather than the propaganda the other enemies are doing there, that should not be. And there should not be the debate.
There's a gentleman.
Yeah, and that should be not be
right.
the
I agree, sir. Just
Thank you very much. And adding on to that, the fact is all of us are here today because they are guarding the borders. You can't start questioning your protectors, and if you do that, the psychology is very twisted.
Let's take that question.
I am very happy that Gaurav ji said they have done an internal audit of what false news or fake news what they have circulated. And do you think there will be a system where the media houses can publish their internal findings of, like, you by mistake, unknowingly you put a fake news. So, but you have told me to the consumers,
no, sir,
we have done an internal audit.
He's going to reply, yes. Okay.
But we did.
Is it in public domain?
Went on air.
It's in public domain, the
is
findings.
in public domain.
Yes.
So what corrective measures you have taken that in future there will be no such kind of news? Is the public...
It's an emerging situation.
Does the public...
okay, sir.
It's an emerging situation. In an emerging situation, you also adapt. We have a larger OSINT team. We have a larger fact-check team. In fact, our fact-check team, internationally people rely on what we come out with. Our own people rely on what we come out with. So we're going through a lot of systems that, our assignment, which is like, if I may, it's like the Director General of Military Operations. Every bit of information comes in there. There you have very seasoned reporters. You have teams that are cross-checking every video that comes in, that are cross-checking every bit of information that is coming in. So, the terrorist has to succeed once. We have to succeed every time. When they say that for our armed forces who are battling terrorism, it's exactly the same thing with the terror of this misinformation and disinformation that the enemy spreads. We're happy to go a little late with that information, but we want to verify, cross-check, and then put it out. Because more than anything else, we value our credibility. For us, the name India Today or Aaj Tak, it's 50 years of India Today. It means a lot to us.
No, that's it. We'll take it offline. Sorry. My final question, okay, Gaurav, starting with you. In hindsight, did Operation Sindoor demand a different visual grammar according to you less being less dramatic, fewer panels, more field reporting, or do you think it was really like balance on a broader scale?
So I'll not speak for the entire media, to each their own. The fact that people watch India Today and Aaj Tak on big days, on events, on these big stories, it just goes on to show that our audiences trust us across the world. Because our aim is to come out with facts. We have the most credible faces who are domain experts on whatever we are doing, and we get the best panel of experts. So our effort is to give you news that is good in terms of factual and comprehensive, so that you go home with the big picture. We don't tell you this is right, this is wrong. We give you all sides of the story. You decide what is right and what is wrong. And perhaps that is why that credibility works.
Charu, what is the one thing, according to you, that journalists consistently misunderstand about government's decision making, especially when we have something like Sindoor, Operation Sindoor going on, or during other national security crises?
Being careful does not mean that you're concealing. I think this is a very clear message that all the journalists should understand, because we're all on the same side here. The government wants to make sure that if they're being careful with information, if they are taking a little bit of time, it's exactly as Gaurav said, let's verify every single thing and then we put it out. We cannot be in a situation where journalism, even well-meaning journalism, puts in jeopardy what our country has set out to do, and that has happened in the past. There have been lapses in security because of journalism, because of this need to very quickly get what is happening on ground out to the people. We can't be in that situation again. We've suffered once and we refuse to suffer again. We have to learn from our mistakes.
If I may, when we were covering the Kargil war in 1999, some bits of information, according to the armed forces, benefited the adversary. Unfortunately, even when we were covering 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, even then, there was information that the Pakistanis were getting from Indian television channels that was helping the command and control center in Karachi direct the terrorists in Mumbai, especially in that Jewish house, on how, and those tapes, when we aired them on India Today, I've heard that entire conversation when we put out those series. These terrorists were confused because from helicopters they were rappelling down, the commandos. That's the time the terrorists were being guided from Pakistan, from that Karachi control room, on कैसे उनको X बनाना है, कैसे fire करना है, कैसे उनको pin down करना है. This was happening. Now those lessons were learnt and put in place during Op Sindoor, that nothing was put out real time. We had a lot of information which we did not put out until government officially said, yes, we've bombed Noor Khan, yes, we've bombed Sargodha, yes, we've bombed Rahim Yar Khan and Bolari in Sindh. And everyone who says about Karachi, people said Karachi was bombed. Please Google where is Malir Cantonment. Malir Cantonment is Karachi. Their radars were taken down. And that is exactly what we reported when the government finally put it out in public domain.
Thank you. And I want to add very quickly to that. So while 26/11 was happening, I lived in Mumbai. When Kasab was hanged, I was again in Mumbai. In fact, at that point of time, I think was my first understanding of what terrorism means. It was my first understanding because in that hotel were people that I went to court with in the morning. So it was something that I had never seen before. And at that point of time, people who are our heroes, people who are there so that they can protect the others, were compromised because of somebody's very selfish, very egoistic need to put their name out there in a big way. No, that's not journalism. You cannot be compromising on the lives of people because आपको ये दिखाना है मैं सबसे सामने जाकर खड़ा हुआ हूँ, खड़ी हुई हूँ.
I think we've come a long way and we have implemented the learnings, and from even Operation Sindoor, the learnings.
One expectation of the government, if I may, and I'm sure, Zaka is also here, he'll also agree. What we require is faster flow of information from the government. We get a lot of information through sources. You get a lot of information on WhatsApps. There are people you trust because they've given you information in the past and over decades. But that authorized flow of information has to be faster and real time. The government has to decide whatever mechanism they may want to choose. But when the government is also seeing there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation coming in, and that there are, it's not just a hostile Pakistan, but there are arms agencies or governments in different parts of the world. They need to be countered real time. We knew real time that a Pakistani aircraft had been shot down 300 kilometers away. I had it from my sources. I knew F-16s had been shot down, and we put out that information on India Today that an F-16 has been shot down. But the government finally confirmed that 3 months later. By then, while the war on ground, yes, India has won, there's an information war that also needs to be won with facts.
A 30-second comment. Do you think the government has to hold more press briefings, more real-time, briefings?
So, a government does not function in isolation. As Gaurav also said, even within his organization, he's got checks and balances and layers. A government is a machinery far, far larger than any one media organization. It's far larger. There are provisions in place to check everything twice. There is red tape, definitely. There are layers through which this information passes, gets approved, and then gets put out. So yes, we can work on making it faster, but should that be a priority over what is correct and what is not? I don't think so. Also, at the end of the day, the government in the beginning could be of the opinion that all of this information is not needed in the public domain currently, and maybe they might change their mind about a couple of those things. That's why the lag between the F-16 information. But at the end of the day, when we are in a place of crisis, when we are at war, and the people the government has speaking at these places, these are the people who've been a part of the ops, right? These are the people who've led it. So we have to take their word as the gospel truth, because like I said, they are our protectors. We are able to discuss the war today because we are alive and kicking, and we have a space where we can do it thanks to them. If we can't turn around and question them every step of the way and say, tumko kuch nahi pata, main tumko bata raha hu.
I think with this, I think we have our own set of learnings now for the media, even for the government. I think we've learned some things which we'll learn and implement in future as we've done so far. But thank you, Charu and Gaurav, for joining us on the very first panel. Great to have you with us. Thank you.